Hi, I'm Kat. Welcome to my channel and welcome to today's video. So today we are going to be spending a bit of time going over my most recent fantasy romance reads or romantasy reads and just kind of talking about what happened in them, what I rated, and if I would recommend them. The majority of these also are pretty recent releases. I think there's only two that were a few years ago, so this is also a review of new books out there that you might be interested in. And I hope you're interested because I am so incredibly excited to get into today's video. And as always, if you haven't already, please subscribe and you will see lots more fun videos like this. So let's go, let's dive in, let's take a look. So let's start by talking about my most recent read, which is House of Bane and Blood. So this one is described as a Peaky Blinders type romance or fantasy world where it is, I guess, kind of set in a world that's in this time period, and we're following two rival families. So I'll just preface this by saying I've never seen Peaky Blinders, so like that does nothing for me, but I'm thinking kind of like a 1920s inspired world, and we are following like crime families. So we're following two main characters, and one of them her family owns a railroad that kind of like controls all imports and exports of this world, and the other person we are following is the heir to a crime family, and they end up having an arranged marriage where due to her family's terrible finances, and they basically find somebody who is willing to pay an exorbitant price to marry her and basically keep this railroad afloat. So it is a enemies to lovers sort of marriage of convenience. So I'm saying sort of enemies to lovers because they aren't really enemies, but they're kind of in rival families. And we are following them through this world where there's a bunch of plots going on where it seems like people do not want this marriage to happen. They don't want these families to align. And a lot of people are doing whatever they can to kind of like find a way to get them apart. There's a very interesting magic system in this one too, and just a lot of like deep mythology and all these other creatures that we're starting to learn about in this first book. And we're really following them as they, are in this arranged marriage, get to know each other, fall for each other, kind of like will do anything to save each other. And yes, I like that a lot. This one was a 4-star read for me. I just found it really intriguing. It definitely had a lot of things that were super interesting in the plot and a lot that like really kept me wanting to keep going and learning more about the story. It also ended on like a super exciting note, so I'm really excited for the next book. But yeah, this one's good if you'd like that 1920s time period. One thing I've been hearing though is if you are a fan of Peaky Blinders, you might not like this because that comparison doesn't fully work, but I thought it was pretty good. A River of Golden Bones is a Sleeping Beauty retelling, but with werewolves. So we are following we are following twin girls who are the heirs and last remaining members of a royal family of the Golden Wolves. So on the night of their birth, this sorceress came into the castle and murdered the royal family, and a fairy came in and basically managed to pull these twin girls who had just been birthed to safety, and presumably they have been dead this whole time. Like the realm thinks that they are dead, and this sorceress is ruling in their stead. Aside from this fairy, the only person who really knows that they are alive is the king of the Silver Wolves, and he arranges a marriage between his heir and the firstborn twin, that when they reach the age of adulthood, these two girls will come out of hiding, reveal themselves as the heirs, and there will be a marriage between them and an alliance to come. But when they come out, the sorceress comes obviously and basically puts the oldest girl into a eternal sleep, a la Sleeping Beauty, and a curse that can only be broken by true love's kiss. So we follow her younger sister as she goes on an adventure to try and find a way to break this curse, and travels through the realms, sees all of the other kingdoms, and realizes like what a terrible state her kingdom is currently in. So it's really just her, trying to take down this sorceress. Overall, I thought this one was okay, but it took me like a ridiculously long time to realize that it was a Sleeping Beauty retelling, which kind of embarrassing for me. I don't feel like it did a good enough job explaining things. Like, the world building was definitely lacking and the characters weren't fully fleshed out the way I wanted them to, but yeah. Overall, it was decently fun, and I did give this one a 3-star. The Shadows Between Us by Trisha Levenseller is a story of a young noblewoman who, for some reason, decides to go on a mission to seduce the king and then kill him because she wants to be queen. She wants power, ultimate power, and does not think that just seducing the king is enough. She thinks she has to kill him. So she sets up this plan to seduce him. He is a king who is notorious for having no interest in any of the noblewomen in his court, has never taken an interest in anybody who has come to meet him, and his advisors are very much trying to get him to find a queen. But she concocts this whole plan, and it actually works, and she gets his attention, and they come up. He proposes that they make an alliance where he pretends to be courting her, or they pretend to be courting, so that he will get his advisors off his back and he will help her, like, just pretending to be courting with her will raise her position in court. She goes along with it because she thinks this is the best way to get him to fall for her. And this king, he has an interesting, like, shadow magic. So it sounds like he can make his body, like, why am I not thinking of the word? I'm thinking impermeable. That's not the word, but he can make his body like shadows, so things can pass through it. He also has this caveat to his magic where if somebody who has touched him is in a room with him, his power is null and void. So he has this intense rule where nobody is allowed to touch him, and he will not allow himself to touch this woman. He won't allow himself to touch anyone. And that is kind of like the biggest barrier to the romance, is that he will not do anything because he does not want to be vulnerable. And at the same time, he has noticed that there have been a lot of threats in his life, and he wants to try and find who is trying to kill him. I really like this one a lot too. I thought that, like, I really like the love story. I like the setting. I like the magic. It was just like, I like when a fantasy romance has something more to it. So like this one had a mystery to be solved, which was fun, and trying to find the traitors within the court and all of that. I thought it was just a super interesting world, and like definitely really enjoyed this one. Dark Water Daughter, meanwhile, was one that was like incredibly disappointing to me. So this is a pirate romance, I guess, like a pirate and a woman who is able to sing to the magic. She's like a storm singer, and she has this power where when she sings, it controls the storms around her. So women with abilities like hers are very much enslaved at this point. Like, they are, anybody who's identified as having an ability like this is immediately taken prisoner, and basically they have no rights. They're not viewed as a person anymore and are sold off for slavery. So it's found what she has, and then she is brought to this auction box, and all of these different pirates are trying to buy her. So we're following her story as she starts working on one of these pirate ships and is figuring out all of these different things. And we're also following the story of a pirate hunter who is intrigued by her and tracking down the ship that she's on. I had a lot of issues with this book where, first of all, it just wasn't exciting. There were too many characters. It was too hard to keep everyone apart, and I felt like every single character was like the most one-dimensional, uninteresting thing ever. Like, I couldn't tell you the personality of any of them. I couldn't tell you really any defining characteristics of any of them either. And like, everyone melded together. There was so much random action and things just randomly happening that it was either like a bunch of action in a row where you couldn't really follow what was happening, or long pages of nothing. And yeah, this one did nothing for me. It just really like missed the mark on so many ways, I felt like, and very, very disappointed in that. Because when I hear that I'm getting a pirate romance, I am thinking Pirates of the Caribbean. I'm thinking excitement and fun times and fun adventures, but it was boring, uninteresting, and ultimately a disappointment. But one that I actually would say kind of delivers on this pirate vibe is the Ever King. So we are following the king of the Ever Fae and a princess of the Earth Fae. So years previously, there had been a huge war between the two Fae realms, and since then there's been like this barrier that has stopped people from traveling between. The Earth Fae, shockingly, they are on Earth, but the Ever Fae are kind of like in another realm under the water, which is pretty cool. But they travel around on boats, and they're very, like, I think very piratey vibes. Like, They do have their land, but it is like the majority of their time is spent on boats. And yeah, this king, he has his own pirate crew. He travels around. And when they were children, he had been captured as part of this war, and princess happened upon him one time. They had this connection, something happened, and it left her with like a little kernel of power of his, I would say. Like, that's kind of how I describe it. But one day as a dare, her cousin like dares her to touch the barrier that stops everything. She does, and it basically sends an alert out to the king that he is able to cross it. So he does, and he comes in and kidnaps her, and then forces her to come to the Everrealm and travel around as his prisoner. And this overall was really good. Like, I've heard someone describe it as like Pirates of the Caribbean, but if Jack Sparrow and Elizabeth had gotten together. And I do kind of see that. And I feel like it kind of got into like a fun idea like that, because the water magic that these fae had was super cool. There was all these battles on pirate ships and just stuff like that was really fun. But my only like complaint of this one is I really was going into it expecting it to be a bit darker, because we are following this like captor-captive like relationship, and you kind of expect that that's going to be a little more intense, a little more nuanced, like, just kind of like have a lot more depth to it. And I don't feel like it did. I felt like they were all very like too relaxed with this idea of like, oh, you've taken me prisoner, blah blah blah. Okay, like I'm fine with that. I'll fall in love with you very easily. I'll be your friend. Like, there wasn't as much like conflict in that area. But otherwise, I really enjoyed this one, and I'm really excited to get to other books in this series. Yeah, just like I wish it was just slightly darker. In Slave to Sensation by Nalini Singh, there is a world that is run by these Psi people. So Psi for psychic abilities, and they are a race of people who have all these magical powers, but they had previously been like in a lot of trouble for a rash of violent crimes. So their people have been since then raised to basically be fully emotionless. So by that I mean they are raised to be like cold, and they are not supposed to have any feeling in them. They are not supposed to be ruled by emotions. They are supposed to be ruled only by logic. And like trained isn't even the right word. Like, they've been conditioned their entire lives to be just cold-hearted people. And we're following a woman who has been sent, like, who is working on a business deal with a group of shifters. And shifters are known for being very hot-headed, very full of emotions, very like ruled by their heart. And this real estate deal is set up, but it is kind of with the purpose that she will go in, kind of infiltrate the shifters and find out their secrets, because these two groups of people have been incredibly like separated from each other. They have no connection. They know nothing about each other as a species. But when she goes in, this shifter is starting to suddenly like make her question everything she knows about herself. And suddenly she is feeling things she's never felt before. Suddenly she is caring about people. And it has like really made her completely rethink everything she's been taught up to this point. And there follows her story of being very intrigued with the shifter, trying to hide it, but also like really wanting to explore what he is making her feel. And I thought this was really good. And I definitely thought this one was good. It was like very interesting to see this society. There's also like this undercurrent plot of like serial killings that have been taking place, and that is why the shifters want to get in with the Psis, because all of these like young shifters have been killed, but the way they're being killed is so methodical, and it is clear that the cuts are very clinical. Like, there's no passion, no emotion behind it. So they've become convinced that it is a Psi who's doing this. So they want to get in with the Psis to like see if they can figure out information from them. So it did have this like almost forbidden romance type of thing, a really interesting mystery to solve, really interesting world, interesting magics, like all of the stuff that like really worked for me. So yes, I like this one a lot. Definitely would recommend it. And I think this series has like 10-15 books in it, and all of them are following like different couples within the world. So yes, I definitely want to read more. And next we have Bonded by Thorns, which is a Wide Shoes fae romance. So we are following a young human girl. We're following a human girl who accidentally stumbles into the fae realm after she's following her father, who he spent his entire life like trying to get to the fae realm because he believes his wife has disappeared there. But she follows along with, and when he gets there, he is like immediately taken captive by these fae princes. So she decides to bargain herself that she will happily go in his place and stay captive if he'll be let free, and she will happily live out the rest of her life as these Fae princes, like, prisoner. And they agree. So there are 4 princes, 1 for each of the seasons, because each of the courts represent a different season. And she is basically kept there in their central kingdom where all 4 of them live. And yeah, she's there as their prisoner. There was a curse placed on them like 20 years previous that basically like forces them to stay there all the time. And she decides to start helping them to find a way to break this curse. And the only way to do it is for each of them to find their mate. And this is a Why Choose romance. First book, very slow burn, very much building up to things that will happen later, but it is a very like introduction to the characters, starting to set that longing, set that like angst, set it like a little bit of the pining for what's to come in the later ones. And it was pretty good. I read this one for my book club with friends, and it was definitely like a great fun time. And like not a crazy amount happens in this first book, but it definitely lays the groundwork for a lot of potentially interesting things to come. And yeah, there you have it. Those are 7 recent romantasy reads that I have read. There you go. Those are 7 recent romantasy reads of mine. I'll be doing videos like this like every few months when I have a good amount to talk about. But yeah, I think those were some fun ones, some fun recent releases, and definitely like a few that I would highly recommend. So I think the only ones that I talked about today that I wouldn't recommend are Darkwater Daughter and A River of Golden Bones. Both of those just ended up being a little boring, and I don't feel like were well written otherwise. But all the other ones, like, definitely interesting and very solid romantasy books. The only disappointing thing I have to say is there's no 5 stars in this list, but maybe next time we'll have some. So that is all for today's video. Again, if you haven't subscribed, please do so. I will be having lots more videos soon talking about more romantasy books, and hopefully I will see you in the next video. Bye.